Hello friends, welcome back to my channel, Patronosaurus Reads. I'm Katie, aka Patronus, and I read a lot. Which then, when I have to do a 25 book wrap up, I regret my life decisions. So, I got myself some water because I feel like my voice is going to be going out by the end of this. I would advise you to grab a beverage or a snack as well, because this is going to be a long one, folks. So first I wanted to quickly talk about the books that I read during Buzzword Athan. I did their own mini wrap up at the end of my Buzzword Athan vlog. So if you want to watch that, even just skip to the end to see what my thoughts were on those books, then I will link that, all the places that you link things. I read 5 books during Buzzword Athan, which I was very happy about. I read one 1-star book, which is my only 1-star of the whole month. That was 99% Mine by Sally Thorne. It was pretty bad. And that's all I'm going to say about it, because I've already talked about it a lot and I don't want to talk about this book ever again. But then everything else in Buzzword Athan was really good. So I gave 4 stars to Twice in a Blue Moon by Christina Lauren. I gave 4 stars to The Wizards of Once by Cressida Cowell. And I gave 4 stars to Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. And then I also had a 5-star read, which was, I don't know, I had to look. It was The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid, which is a reread for me. I knew it was going to be 5 stars, so that's what I read during Buzzword Athan. There you go. I wanted to kind of zoom past those because I've already talked about them. Didn't want to spend time on it too long in this very, 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 very long wrap up. So like I said, 99% Mine was my only 1-star read, but I did have some 2-star reads. So the first of those was Filthy Vows by Alessandra Tor. I saw somebody recommend it or something, somebody read it for a Smutathon. I don't know what it was. I read it and I was like, this is not good. For a book that looks the way it does, you would expect it to be a lot smuttier than it is. And instead it was just a lot of this couple's relationship drama that I didn't care about because none of them were likable in any way. It was just really boring. Smut should not be boring. It should at least have the sexy parts to entertain you. And this book barely even had that. So I was like, why am I here? Why am I doing this? My next 2-star read was Whipped by Jenica Snow, which again, somebody recommended. I was catching up on Smutathon vlogs at the beginning of the month. So then I read a lot of smut this month. That's just how it goes sometimes. And this is very short. Jenica Snow writes novellas. I think it was somewhere between 60 and 100 pages, which is, not a lot. And this was also just very boring. Is too sweet and cutesy for me, I think. I like a little bit of angst in my relationships, in the drama. That's what I like. And this just didn't really have that. So for somebody else, that might be to your taste. But it just was not mine. My next 2-star read was Crashing the Alist by Summer Heacock, which is about this girl who accidentally finds out some information about this super movie star's past, and somehow she gets a hold of his phone number and she calls him when she's drunk and she's like, yeah, I have this information, but don't worry, I'm not gonna tell anybody, because she's drunk. And he takes it as some kind of blackmail threat. So then he makes her fake date him because his team wants it'll be good for his image, but then he treats her like garbage because he thinks that it's hate to love, it's enemies to lovers, right? Which I like, usually. But this was not good. At the beginning, I could understand the guy. And I could understand why he was upset with her and why he would take things the way that he did. But then after she told him repeatedly, I didn't do this, that's not what I meant, please, please, please. And she's crying. And then he's still treating her like dirt. I'm like, what? Especially after they then have a breakthrough. And they're getting along, and that's when the actual relationship is forming. I was so angry because once you have the breakthrough, you have the breakthrough in the relationship, right? But if it's the same obstacle in your relationship that you've already worked past, then that for me as a reader is not believable. It's not entertaining. It's just annoying, and it makes me dislike every character. Also, the guy was 1000% based off of Benedict Cumberbatch. He had a obnoxiously British mouthful of a name, and he acted like him, and even the description was very much how people describe Benedict Cumberbatch kind of looking like an alien. It was like that. So then this also just read like really boring, bad, self-indulgent Benedict Cumberbatch fan fiction. Speaking of aliens, I then read a bunch more of the Planet Barbarians series by Ruby Dixon, which I talked about last month. I think I read the first book, and so I talked about that in my October wrap up. And now I've read like up to book 7. Why am I like this? So this series follows this group of women who are kidnapped by aliens, but then this alien ship crash lands on a different planet. This planet is not Earth, and it's not the planet that they were trying to go to. It's like somewhere else, and it is an ice planet. And the women are able to escape, and they make friends with the people who live on the ice planet, Planet Barbarians. And due to various bullshit things, they essentially have to have a parasite put in them to help them live on this planet. And this parasite essentially chooses who your mate is going to be. So like the parasites can tell like who's the most genetically compatible, and then what it's called is resonating. So when you have resonance with someone, you're like your parasite, I can never remember what it's called. It like starts to purr is what the humans call it. And it's like you can like feel the vibrations with like the other person, and then it's like, oh, okay, we're mates forever now. Each book in this series follows a different one of the women and her experience with her mate and like resonance, and some of them are like all about it, like super into it right away, and then others it's like enemies to lovers, blah blah blah. So I gave there's a little novella that on Goodreads is listed as book 4.5, but on my Kindle it's just listed as book 5. So I'm gonna go with the Goodreads one because that is gonna be what more people are familiar with. So Goodreads book 4.5 and book 5 I only gave 2 stars, and then books 2, 3, 4, 6, and 7 I gave 3 stars. Like I said, they each follow like a different woman, and some of the tropes I like better than others. Like the enemies to lovers one, I was like, heck yeah. And then other ones were just like kind of boring. And at this point, they are all kind of starting to run together because the writing style is the same for all of them. Like the author is not really differentiating using narrative voice at all. Like it reads like the exact same person every single book that I read. So I'm like, these are interchangeable at this point. There's enough world building of this ice planet and of the barbarians and where they came from and all this stuff that I'm like interested enough to keep reading, even though I'm kind of past the point of caring about the relationships. I now care about the world, even though like I know the world is never going to be super developed. It's not going to be like this epic sci-fi fantasy series where like you do have really developed world building, because that's not the point of the series. But I think it is going to be enough that I'm invested. Okay, I'm done talking about these books now. I also gave 3 stars to Maid, which has like some kind of subtitle by Stephanie Land, which is a memoir about this woman who was struggling a lot financially, and she had a young daughter, and she was working as a maid, and it's a lot about her experience as a maid and how she was treated both well and poorly, the relationships that she has with the father of her child and her family, and how those things feed into her being able to support herself, not support herself, all these things. It was just middle of the road for me. Like I don't feel super comfortable like judging someone's actual life story and being like, this is good or this is bad. But the writing itself was just not my favorite. There have been memoirs that I have listened to or read, and it's been great. And like has really hit me emotionally, and this one just didn't quite do that. Like she definitely explores how the system is not really set up to help people, because you can't really make enough money to get yourself out before they kick you out, if that makes sense. So like the threshold of welfare is so low that as soon as you're making $1 more, you're out, even though that's not really enough to be able to start helping yourself and supporting yourself truly. So that was really interesting. Then I read Poison Study by Maria V. Snyder, which is a book that I read when I was in like 5th or 6th grade, I think, which is maybe a little young to be reading this book. I saw someone's review on Goodreads saying that this book is what Throne of Glass wishes it was, and I was like, I mean, this book came out in 2005, so I was like, I mean, in the book world, a long time ago. And it follows this woman named Yelena who is scheduled to be executed. She lives in this, it's not a kingdom, it used to be a kingdom, and now it's like a military dictatorship because the kingdom was overthrown. She lives in this country where it's illegal to kill anybody ever under any circumstances, like accidental death, manslaughter, doesn't matter, like you are immediately put to death. So she killed someone, she's sentenced to death, except the next person who is sentenced to death is actually asked to become the food taster for the commander, who's the ruler of this country. So when the last food taster dies, Yelena happens to be the next person coming up. So she gets offered this position to be the food taster because it has to go to someone whose life is forfeit. So then she's working through palace politics, and the person she killed was the son of one of the generals. So there's like the commander who runs the country, and that's who Yelena tastes his food. And then there's generals immediately under him. She killed a general's son. So, like, there's a lot of drama with that, and people are not treating her very well, but then there are other people that do treat her well. And it was good. I think my enjoyment of it was lessened by the audiobook, because I remember loving this book and loving this series when I first read it when I was like 12. But the audiobook, so Yelena's 19. I would consider this a new adult series, because it doesn't really talk about like coming of age stuff like young adult. Like, it is a lot of action adventure, but like Yelena's also young, so adult or new adult fantasy, whatever you want to call it. Yelena's 19, and I know the narrator for this audiobook was way older than that. Like, she did not sound like a 19-year-old. I was listening to it, I was like, this is not enjoyable. So I think if I had read it physically, like I used to read it, like I used to just have a physical copy, I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more. My next 3-star read was Learn My Lesson by Katie Robert. This is the next book in the Wicked Villain series. So I read the first one, I think last month in October, and that followed Jasmine and Jafar, like a Jasmine and Jafar retelling, and this one follows Hades, Meg, and Hercules as they're in like a polyamorous relationship together. If you're unfamiliar with the series, it is a smutty book series that essentially is retelling hero and villain stories from Disney movies, but set in like modern day, and everyone is an adult. It's very important to know that everyone is an adult, and it's also very kinky. It's like Hades owns a sex club. So there you go. It was pretty good. Wasn't as good as the first one with Jasmine and Jafar. What is that book called? Desperate Measures. Not quite as good, but still pretty good. Like, I'm gonna keep reading this series. They're fun. I like this like Disney heroine and villain coming together, like enemies to lovers, hate to love. You know, I'm here for that. So yeah, it was a good time. And the next book I read was My Favorite Half Night Stand by Christina Lauren. This is my last 3-star of the month. It was fine. It's not my favorite Christina Lauren. It follows this group of friends that are all like professors at some University of California school. I can't remember which campus. It's one of them. And so it's like all these guys and then the girl who's the main character. And one night they're like all hanging out and like drinking, whatever, having fun. And one of the guys then takes the girl home and they end up sleeping together. And then he leaves before she wakes up in the morning, so it's a half night stand. And then the rest of the book, like that actually happened very early. And the rest of the book is them trying to figure out if they want to have a relationship. If they don't, they get on these dating apps and they're doing this, that, and the other. And then the girl catfishes the guy. I did not know that going into this book, and I think that is an important part of the plot that you should know. So she like creates her regular profile, and then she also creates like a second fake one. and she matches with the guy that she had sex with. And then like things are going from there, and it's like kind of messy, and I didn't really love that like lying aspect of it, so that's why it was only 3 stars, but it was like fine. Moving on into my 4-star reads. So I read Well Met by Jen DeLuca, which is a romance, like hate to love, set in a Renaissance fair. So the main character, Emily, she is living with her sister and her niece while her sister is like recovering from being in a car accident, and her niece really wants to be in the Renaissance fair, but you have to have an adult if you're under whatever age to be in the Renaissance fair. So Emily's like, okay, fine, I'll do it. And then the guy who runs it is like super hardcore serious about the Renaissance fair, and so Emily's like, oh, this guy's annoying. But then during the Renaissance fair, her character, who's like a barmaid, and his character, who's a pirate, he's a pirate captain, guys. They, like, their characters have a romance. And so then it's kind of like this will they or won't they, like which feelings are real, which feelings are fake. Like, it was so good. I never knew that I would love a Renaissance fair romance so much, but I absolutely did. The only thing is I wish there had been more scenes of the Renaissance fair and them like doing their scenes together in character, because there were, I mean, a fair few, but that was my favorite part of the book, so I just would always want more. No matter how much there was, I think I would always ask for more of that because it was so good. And then I read The Podex by Elizabeth Acevedo, which is a book written in verse about spoken word, about slam poetry, and I listened to the audiobook, and the author narrates it herself. So like she is a slam poet, she's reading this like it's slam poetry, she's following this character who is trying to reconcile her faith and her parents' faith, and how all of that works together with the relationships that she wants to have and the things that she wants to do, and the way that her body naturally is sometimes considered sinful, and she's like, but this is just how I am. And it was really good, a really interesting commentary on a lot of things in a very short amount of space. I think the audiobook is only like 3.5 hours, but it delivered. And then my last 4-star read was Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson. This is a reread. It follows this mystery. It's like a dual timeline mystery. So way back in the 1930s at this fancy school that this guy named Albert Ellingham started, his wife and his daughter were kidnapped. His wife, her body was eventually found, but the daughter was never found. And then if we jump to the present, it follows this girl named Stevie who gets invited to this school in modern day, and every kid who goes to the school like has some kind of special thing. And Stevie's thing is true crime, and her project is to solve the Ellingham case. She wants to solve the case from the 1930s all the way back. So it's following these dual timelines, and you get little bits and pieces of what happened in the 30s, and you get more mysteries and more death that occurs in modern time. A very well-crafted mystery, I think. The only reason it's 4 stars is I think because the beginning is just really slow. Like, you're given a lot of exposition, but it doesn't start ramping up until a little bit later, and to me, that equates to the beginning being a little bit boring. But then once you're in it, and it's great. Then I read 2 5-star books. The first of which being The Vanishing Star by Maureen Johnson, which is the second book in this mystery series. And this is 5 stars because it continues on this mystery. You keep on finding out new things about the Ellingham case that you didn't know before, and Stevie starts piecing things together while also solving modern day mysteries at her school right now. And this book is not like the first one where it's slow. It like jumps the gun, it goes straight into it. It's like action, action, action the whole time. At least I felt like maybe it's not action, but it's interesting the whole time, and it's really entertaining, really good. I regret reading it like 2 months before the last book comes out, because now I just reminded myself how good the series is and how it was kind of left on a cliffhanger, and now I just have to wait for the next book to come out, and I am sad about it. Then my final 5-star read of the month was The Queen of Nothing by Holly Black, surprising exactly no one that I'm obsessed with this series, and this book was everything. Like, I I got the audiobook. I love the audiobooks. That's how I've listened to all the books. Like, I haven't read any of them physically. I've just listened to them on audio. They're so good. I love the audiobooks. Like, would highly recommend. I think Caitlin Kelly does a great job narrating. I mean, I can't say what this book is about because it's the final book in a trilogy, but it was everything that I wanted. I sat there and I just listened to the audiobook. Like, I wasn't cleaning, I wasn't driving, I wasn't doing anything other than sitting down and listening and like playing games on my phone, like, which is not what I do normally with audiobooks. Like, the point of audiobooks to me is to be able to read while I'm doing something else, but I knew I had to focus all of my attention on this book, and it didn't disappoint. Like, my girl Holly, she brought it. The only thing is I wish there was more Carden, but that's like with Well Met. Like, I just love Carden so much, and I would always want there to be more Carden no matter how much there was. But I do think that there was a lack of Carden in this one, and I love him. That's my thoughts on The Queen of Nothing. Okay, I actually went through this wrap up a lot more quickly than I expected. Good job, me. Wow, 25 books in a month. Don't expect that to ever happen ever again. I don't know how it did, and it's very unlikely to ever occur again in my human life. So, it was a pretty good reading month overall. I mean, a lot of 3 stars, but like, that's what reading is sometimes. But very few 1 and 2 stars. And The Queen of Nothing happened. So honestly, in my opinion, one of the best reading months of the year. Right? Right. If you've read any of these books, let me know what you thought of them. If you have any suggestions for what I should be reading this month, how I can end the year strong, end the decade strong, let me know. Leave a comment, like, and subscribe. That's what YouTubers say. I'll see you guys next time.